Two guests today, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand's press call from yesterday is segment 1. Meteorologist Rob Carolan will be the whole segment 2. Stay with us.
Next on AM 1480 Wlea, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Ryan O'Neill.
A lot of interesting information comes out of this Newsmaker, especially if you're a farmer and especially if you follow national politics. You'll hear questions of Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. The on-topic questions for the senator are about dairy farming. The off-topic questions were all about the presidential race. Starting out with Senator Kirsten Gillibrand and her opening statements here about some dairy farm legislation she's working on to get the USDA to pay back farmers for what they lost in paying high premiums for milk losses. It's kind of a complicated thing, but the senator breaks it down.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining. Before we begin, I want to speak about the extremely cold weather that's been hitting our state and most of the northern part of the country. This weather is very dangerous, and I encourage everyone to do whatever you can to stay warm and to stay safe. Make sure you protect yourselves, look out for your neighbors, and look out for the vulnerable members of our communities. As many of you know, our dairy farmers in New York have been hurting for years. They work so hard, they do everything right, but they're still barely getting by. And too many of them have had to close down their farms for good. Our dairy farmers have been hit with extremely low milk prices, much lower than the cost of production. They've had to suffer because of President Trump's reckless trade war. And they've been totally ripped off by a dairy insurance program that did nothing to help them when they needed it. But at the end of last year, when Congress passed the 5-year farm bill, there was finally some good news, and our dairy farmers, for once, were able to breathe a sigh of relief. That's because the final farm bill that passed Congress in mid-December last year included a provision I secured to put money back into the pockets of our dairy farmers who had paid into the failed insurance system and got nothing in return. Our farmers need those funds, and I fought hard on the Agriculture Committee to make sure they were going to get them. But then President Trump started his government shutdown and waited 35 days before he ended it. Because of the shutdown, our dairy farmers haven't seen a penny of the refunds that they're owed, a process that should have begun as soon as the Farm Bill became law last year. We're only just beginning to understand the terrible economic consequences of the government shutdown. But one thing we already know is that our dairy farmers were waiting and expecting a payment from the USDA. And once again, the Trump administration is failing to help our dairy farmers. That's why I'm calling on the Department of Agriculture to start implementing the dairy provisions of the Farm Bill now, today, and get our dairy farmers the relief they urgently need. Our dairy farmers cannot wait another day for these funds. They need to know when the payments are coming, how they are going to receive them from the USDA, and how much they're going to be getting. Because without this information, they're not going to be able to make plans for their farms, and spring planting is coming soon. I'm also calling on the Department of Agriculture to allow dairy farmers to start enrolling now into the new insurance program that we included in the Farm Bill. It's called the Dairy Margin Coverage Program. The old program failed, and this new program is going to do a much better job of helping our dairy farmers manage their risks when they need it. I want to say this very clearly. The government shutdown was totally unnecessary. It accomplished absolutely nothing. And worst of all, it caused families, workers, and farmers all over our state to needlessly suffer, including our dairy farmers. My priority now is making sure our dairy farmers are getting the support they need, and I urge the Trump administration to make that a top priority too. Thank you, and I'm now happy to take your questions.
Didn't catch the first reporter's name here, but he's asking a question about water safety issues.
Not set the drinking water standards for PFAS chemicals?
I think it's outrageous, and I'm highly concerned. I'm very concerned that they are not taking PFOA and PFAS seriously enough. So I intend to vote against the nominee.
Do we have any on-topic questions for the senator?
Hi, Senator Gillibrand. This is Ashley Kafara with WENY News in Horseheads, New York.
Hello.
My question for you is, besides dairy farmers, are there any other groups of people this will help?
So the insurance program is specific for dairy, but there was a lot of money in the Farm Bill for other programs for rural areas across New York, for Long Island, for upstate New York, for any place that has agriculture. We had a lot of money in specifically for the conservation programs, which are really utilized intensely by farmers throughout New York. We had money to protect soil, protect water. We also had a lot of money in for rural broadband, and so that we could actually have rural health care. So that's something that will affect a lot of places in the state. A lot of places realize that if they could have telemedicine, it could help protect people better. So the rural broadband money was very important. I also think there were some other provisions that are delayed that will help New Yorkers, and I am concerned that they aren't being implemented, like food stamps and other things that can help people when they're in great need.
Thank you.
Do we have any other on-topic questions for the senator?
This is Abraham Kenmore with the Watertown Daily Times.
Hello.
Hi. My understanding is payments for 30 days when they're payments for a failed policy from 2 or 3 years ago.
Where are you reporting from?
Sorry, Watertown, New York.
Yeah. So you know, because your paper has reported on this, the number of dairy farmers who are struggling. We've had dairy farmers in our state and in your region actually commit suicide. So this money couldn't come soon enough. For a large farm, it could mean a check for $2,500. It's the kind of money that could make a huge difference in a farmer's life to meet payments, to meet bills, to just be able to decide how to plant the next year crop. So the truth is that amount of money is very relevant for our dairy farmers and other farmers around the state. So I think it's urgent. And to have such a delay for no reason, for a political stunt, just shows the lack of concern and compassion that this president displays for people that need his leadership. His trade wars continue to create trouble for our farmers, particularly our dairy farmers and fruits and vegetable farmers that export what they make worldwide. So it's just more to the mess that President Trump has created, and we just need this money to flow now. Our farmers also have to decide what insurance they're going to buy, and they need access to a better program now, not later.
Okay, we have time for another on-topic question if anybody has it, and then we're going to get to the off-topic questions after the last on-topic question.
Brian O'Neill, Wlea Hornell. Can you tell us exactly what was the cause of the failure of the insurance program, why it originally failed?
So basically the insurance program didn't pay out. So when you bought insurance for the price differential of the cost of production versus how much you got reimbursed, it didn't allow for most of New York farms to qualify. We have smaller farms. We do not have the big industrial farms, and our cost of production is very high. And unfortunately, the cost of production was higher than the reimbursement rate for 100 weight of milk. So what the new plan does is fix some of those problems, and it makes it easier for more farms in New York to buy at a level that they actually will get reimbursed, so they will see support when the price of milk is too low.
Thank you.
Do we have any off-topic questions for the senator? Thanks.
Yes.
Hi, Senator, this is Andrew Donovan from News Channel 9 in Syracuse. How are you?
Good.
My question is about the future of Interstate 81 through downtown Syracuse, something you're knowledgeable and have taken a position on, and I have a few parts to this. Why is this project important enough for you to bring it to the attention of the Federal Highway Administrator nominee yesterday? What are your sources in state government telling you about the pending release for the draft environmental impact statement? It's a report a lot of people are waiting on without really any timeline. And third, you've come out as a supporter of the community grid, joining a vocal and passionate group, but there's an equally vocal and passionate group.
Okay. Yeah, equally compassionate group. Keep going on.
There's equally vocal and passionate group supporting the tunnel. It's become a very divisive issue. Who will make the ultimate decision if the local community cannot come to a consensus? And what do you say to the opposing side?
So I believe these decisions should always be community decisions. But the legacy of that highway is really based in decisions that harmed communities, divided communities, that I think were very much left the community with a feeling that it was determined on racial bias. So the truth is, if you care about all communities and you care about all New Yorkers, then you're not going to continue to double down on something that divides a community. And so having this be part of a community grid, when I talked to the advocates, made a lot of sense to me personally, because it allows for the main streets and the communities to thrive. And they don't get passed over or passed through. They don't get cut in half. And it's very much part of a community grid system where you're going to have people investing in our small businesses, investing in our local economy, having people be part of a broader community, and helping the community there to thrive as opposed to divide it. I think that those who want to either continue the same strategy or have a tunnel under, they might be concerned about their economic goals for different parts of the city. But I think if you really do care about this community, that this community should get to have an outsized influence about the outcome. And what I heard from the community leaders is that this is something that makes a great deal of difference to their families and their businesses. So I listened to the community. I think they had a great idea, which is why I expressed my view. But always, it should be community decided.
Okay, Marcia, I think we have a lot of reporters on the line now. I'm so sorry, but I think Marcia also asked had a question for the senator.
It's the Senator Kirsten Gillibrand press call from yesterday. This question comes from Marcia Kramer, WCBS TV, New York City.
Senator, it's Marcia Kramer. My question to you is about Gateway, and I'm wondering, since this is such a critical project for the downstate area, if you have a strategy in mind for trying to get the funding, fast-tracked, to try to get money to come into the budget, despite the president's opposition to the project. Yeah.
So obviously, Marcia, New Yorkers understand how important the Gateway Tunnel is. For a number of reasons. Unfortunately, the Hudson Tunnel was damaged during Superstorm Sandy. Unfortunately, it's a crumbling tunnel. It runs a huge risk of deterioration in the near term that could possibly shut down commerce on the eastern seaboard if it was to have future problems. And so the reason why the Gateway project is so important is we need that thoroughfare of commerce to be new and strong and resilient and capable, and it's a huge economic engine for the region. And so my strategy to urge President Trump and his administration to care about this is to talk about the substance and the value of the project. It is so important for the economy. The New Jersey delegation, as well as the New York delegation, has been very forceful on this and tried to bring the president and the administration to the table about why this is so important for the U.S. economy. And so we're going to keep doing that, elevating the issues, elevating the substance, elevating the reason why this is so important, and that delaying the investment is problematic. I mean, we know as New Yorkers the impact of a crumbling infrastructure. We see it in our subways, we see it in MTA, we see it in Amtrak, and every time there's a derailment, every time there's an accident, people can die, and it creates horrible turmoil for people just trying to get to work. So we know the reality of not investing in our infrastructure, particularly our rail lines, and so we should be doing the Gateway Tunnel and explaining to the president and his team why it's so important to not only all New Yorkers and everyone in New Jersey, but the country and entirely the eastern coast of our country.
So, Senator, you're sounding a warning to the president that this could hurt his hometown?
Yeah, and the whole U.S. economy. This is a big deal, and he should understand it's the largest infrastructure project in the country today. I mean, he ran on building infrastructure, and we've not seen it. So start here. If he really wants to rebuild America's crumbling infrastructure, if he really believes $1 trillion for infrastructure, start with the biggest project.
Thanks so much. Does anybody else have an off-topic question for the senator? Thanks.
Hi, Senator Gillibrand. Yeah. Javon Mattal with New York One. I had a question regarding the announcement you made to form an exploratory committee, and looking through that as the lens here, given the context of your announcement today for upstate farmers. I imagine a skeptic might say you're trying to appeal to rural Democrats, not just in New York, but potentially in other states. How do you respond to something like that? And also, will your time on the potential campaign trail affect your ability to serve the people of New York in the Senate?
I intend to serve the people of New York in the Senate well. I will continue to fight for them in everything I do. And as you know, because you've covered me for a long time, I'm an expert on dairy farming, and I've been working for our dairy farmers for a very, very long time. This crisis of the shutdown, we are beginning to realize, has affected more than just the 800,000 workers who didn't get a paycheck for 2 cycles. It's pretty outrageous that our president does not have the empathy or compassion to understand what that would mean to a family who lives paycheck to paycheck. As we've seen the follow-on effects, I've been talking to New Yorkers, and this is one of them. And so I wanted to highlight this as something that affects New Yorkers deeply, that needs to be fixed. And since I am the first senator from New York to serve on the Agriculture Committee in 40 years, I think my voice on these issues is really important.
Thank you so much, everybody. That is unfortunately all the time we have for today, but thanks so much for joining our call.
Thank you, guys. Thanks
so much.
Take care.
So that's that for the Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, presser from yesterday. Going to take a quick break. Back in just a moment on Newsmaker. Stay with us.
McCourt's Auto Collision on State Route 36 just south of Canastillo is a full-service collision shop offering not just collision work, but also paint work. McCourt's has a 24-foot frame straightener with 3-dimensional measurement. McCourt's accepts all insurance companies and can work with you on any deductible you may have. At McCourt's, they work for your interest and your benefit, not the insurance companies. All work is fully warranted and they offer a free loaner car. McCourt's Auto Collision, State Route 36 in Canastillo, where customer satisfaction is always number one. Phone 607-698-9900.
Back on Newsmaker, I'm Brian O'Neill. Now, normally when we connect with Rob Carolan, it's because we're going to do a quick forecast, then get back to segment 2. Well, Rob Carolan today is segment 2 because of the weather. Rob, thanks for joining us. It's cold today.
It is, Brian, but it's all relative. I mean, many of us here this morning in the southern tier waking up to temperatures below zero, but not as far below zero as what we have going on this morning up across the western Great Lakes. Arrowhead of Minnesota, boy, they are really chilly. Right now, International Falls is 45 degrees below zero. That's not the wind chill. That's the actual air temperature. We've got temperatures all along the U.S.-Canadian border there in northeastern Minnesota at 40 or 45 below. That cold air is actually going to retreat up into Canada. But even down this morning as far south as Chicago, we're sitting around 20, 23 below this morning. So it's still really bad in the upper Midwest across Michigan. What's actually helped us a bit has been the wind out of the southwest, bringing milder conditions up from southern Ohio. So even though we're below zero, the cold air is not going to last very long. It's going to start to erode, and we're going to start to notice that temperatures turn warmer over the next several days.
Rob Carolan, you know, a lot of my conservative friends on Facebook, and you hear this on the talk shows too, they will say things like, so whatever happened to global warming? What is your view on that argument that the global warming thing, you know, the conservatives argue that it's a hoax. The Democrats take it very seriously. Wondering where you stand as a meteorologist and what you think of the theory that if it's a cold winter, there's no such thing as global warming, although they've changed the phrase to climate change. Your thoughts?
Well, they're focusing on the wrong thing, Brian, and why is that? And I'll explain why. Human beings, over the course of our evolution, have survived colder climates and warmer climates. We right now are in a warm period in between what we call it an interglacial period. Because of the wobble in the Earth's rotation on its axis, at some point here another ice age is going to set up. It's probably about another 15,000 years away, so none of us are going to be around for it. But the climate will turn colder. Weather and climate, they're not the same thing. Weather is the daily occurrence of weather events. Climate is the study of those weather events over a long period of time. Why are they focused on the wrong things? Because if the climate turns warmer or colder by a couple degrees, we're not going to die. But what will happen is as we put carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, it is doing something. It is being absorbed by the oceans. When you dissolve carbon dioxide in seawater, you form carbonic acid. We are rapidly changing the pH of all of the oceans in the world. Why is this important? Well, 2/3 of the world's population get some of their protein every day from fish. If we change the pH of the oceans too quickly, fish are not going to be able to evolve. They're going to die. You won't die from temperatures getting warmer by 2 or 3 degrees, but you will die from starvation. So the focus is on the completely wrong thing. Why? Well, first law of advertising says perception is reality. When people are waking up to temperatures at 45 degrees below zero, they're saying climate change my butt. So their perception is the climate is not getting warmer, and they don't believe it. However, if you tell them that the ocean is getting more acidic, which it is doing, and fish are going to die and people are not going to be able to eat, that's the right thing to focus on. That's why carbon dioxide levels have to decrease. It's why we shouldn't be putting too much carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, not so much because it may warm the climate by a couple of degrees, but due to the fact it is changing and rapidly changing the pH of all of the oceans around the globe, and that will kill fish, which will in turn lead to starvation.
What do you make of the more far-left politicians who say there's only like a dozen years left of human existence?
They're wrong. And what they're doing is they're doing a disservice, because what's going to happen is 12 years from now, we're all still going to be here. There's not going to be a problem due to the climate. The girl from the Bronx has no idea what she's talking about. I've been forecasting the weather longer than she's been alive. When you do this Chicken Little, the sky is falling and it doesn't happen, you lose any type of credibility you have. Believe me, I know it. Why? Because I have forecasted areas for hurricanes, for tornadoes, for severe weather. You cannot hype this stuff up. When you do it, people don't believe you. We see it all the time with stuff on the Weather Channel or on television where they're constantly screaming that the end is near, and when it doesn't happen, people don't believe them going forward, which is really, really bad. As I've just explained to you, the pH of the ocean could change dramatically within 100 years. Well, that may not affect you or me, but it's certainly going to affect our children and our grandchildren, and that's why we need to use calm, logical explanations of why we should be switching away from fossil fuels and towards a greener way of producing energy. It's really, to be honest, ridiculous now because we have the technology to do it. 100 years ago, there were no such things as solar cells. We have them now. We should continue to use that and wind power to gradually wean ourselves off of using fossil fuels. But to say that it happens and that it has to happen in the next 5 to 10 years is absolutely ludicrous. That's why they lose their credibility, and the people on the far right, it's the same thing. By saying that you can continue to burn these fossil fuels, you can't do it. The oceans are going to become gigantic dead zones. They're going to have no fish in them. Large segments of the Earth's population aren't going to have any food, and that's going to cause all types of geopolitical problems. So both extremes, as is typical, are wrong. It's the sensible middle ground that needs to be taken to solve this problem.
Interesting stuff. Meteorologist Rob Carolan, you cover a lot of stations. What's the coldest place that you've forecasted for this morning?
That would be Langdon, North Dakota, which is currently 17 below zero. They're actually up. They were 26 below earlier this morning, and yesterday, Brian, they were 38 below with a wind chill of 59 below.
Yeah, we've had -9 and -10 temperatures around the towns around here, so -17, that'd be pretty rough.
Yep, and 38 below is even worse.
Rob Carolan, thank you so much for being on our Newsmaker show today.
You got it, Brian. Stay warm.
Thanks a lot, Rob. It's AM 1480 WLEA Hornell.